The heart is one of the vital organs that we have as human beings, and it is also an organ used in sentences like I love you with all my heart. So we're going to learn more about the heart in this tutorial video. Okay, this is Philip Kauma, the excellent biology tutor. Without wasting much of your precious time, let us begin. Alright, so in this video we're looking at the heart, which is a subtopic of transport in animals. The objectives for this video are, we're going to look at the definition of the heart, then we're going to look at cardiac muscle, we're going to look at function of the parts of the heart, we're going to look at pumping of blood within the heart, and finally we're going to look at coronary heart diseases, CHD. So I hope you are ready for this class. I hope your books, your pens are ready. Without wasting much of your precious time, my excellent biology students, let us begin. So definition, what is the heart? The heart is simply a muscular organ that pumps blood around the body through blood vessels. Simple definition. This is just an organ made up of a muscle responsible for pumping blood around the body through blood vessels. Okay, so blood is being supplied to all parts of the body by blood vessels. But for that blood to reach those different parts of the body, there is need for a force which comes from this muscle that makes up the heart. The type of muscle found in the wall of the heart is known as cardiac muscle. And that's what we're going to look at next in the next slide. Otherwise, the heart is simply a muscular organ that pumps blood around the body through blood vessels. So you do not use your heart to love people, my students. You don't do that, okay? You love them with your subconscious mind, not with the heart. The heart only does one thing, which is to pump blood around the body through blood vessels. Now, let's talk about the cardiac muscle, which makes up the walls of the heart. So the wall of the heart is made up of a type of muscle called cardiac muscle, which has the following characteristics among others. The first characteristic of the cardiac muscle is that it is myogenic. It is self-stimulating, meaning that the stimulus for its contraction comes from the muscle itself. It is myogenic. You have to be myogenic in life, my students. You don't need anyone to tell you that you should study. It should just come from you, from within. You should just tell yourself to say, I need to study. That is you being myogenic. You are telling yourself, you are stimulating yourself, you are motivating yourself to carry out a specific action. That's what the cardiac muscle does. It stimulates itself to contract so that blood can be pumped to the rest of the body. You're not the one in control of that. You don't tell your heart, okay, you can pump blood. Okay, now you should stop. You don't do that. It just works on its own because the muscle, known as the cardiac muscle, it is myogenic. It stimulates itself. Okay. Now, to stimulate, what does it mean? To stimulate simply means kufaka mochimwela, okay? To motivate. So now, the stimulus, the motivation of contraction originates from a special patch of cardiac muscle called the pacemaker or sinoatrial node, SAN, found in the right atrium. Inside the heart, there is this organ, a small organ known as the sinoatrial node. What this guy does is that it stimulates. It is the source of motivation for the cardiac muscle to contract on its own. We're going to look at SAN later on, but for now, just know that the stimulus of contraction originates from a special patch of cardiac muscle called the pacemaker. Otherwise, the first characteristic of the cardiac muscle is that it is myogenic. Okay. And then the other characteristic of a cardiac muscle is that it does not develop fatigue. CDMI, ever since you were in your mother's womb, it has been doing the same thing over and over again. Muscle is CDMI. Ingo pumping a chap. It has just been contracting. Up to now, it is still doing the same thing. It does not get fatigued. see them unless there are just other conditions that are going to cause it to stop functioning, okay, like heart diseases or maybe loss of blood due to an accident. Otherwise, if you are just fit and healthy, the heart can contract, this muscle can contract until you are 100 years plus, okay. It does not get fatigued. The only things that are going to cause the heart from pumping are diseases, or maybe you've been in an accident and you've lost blood and things like that. Otherwise, on its own, see them, okay, it does not develop fatigue. And then the other characteristic of the cardiac muscle is that its cells are branched and have a single nucleus each, okay. So each cell, all the cells that are forming up this muscle, they are branched, and each cell has got a single nucleus. Nothing special here, nothing to talk about. Otherwise, these are the characteristics of the cardiac muscle. So now let's talk about the sinoatrial node, okay, the sinoatrial node, SAN. So the sinoatrial node, my excellent student, also known as the sinus node, is a small group of cells located in the right atrium on the upper chamber of the heart. It is the natural pacemaker of the heart, responsible for generating electrical impulses that trigger heartbeats. That's the main function of this guy known as the sinoatrial node. It is simply responsible for generating electrical impulses, and it is these electrical impulses that are going to trigger heartbeats, that are going to trigger the cardiac muscle to contract. That is why we are saying that the stimulus of contraction of the cardiac muscle originates, or it comes from, this guy known as the sinoatrial node, okay. So yeah, as you can see in our diagram, that is where the sinoatrial node is located. It is simply responsible for generating electrical impulses. So when we're talking about electrical impulses, my excellent students, these are just ways in which your body communicates, okay. So if your brain wants to communicate to your leg, it is going to send a message to the leg, but that message is going to be in form of an electrical impulse, okay, which will be transmitted by neurons from the brain to the muscles of the leg. That is how you are able to communicate with your legs, through messages being transmitted within the nervous system. So likewise, in the heart, there is this guy known as the sinoatrial node, which is a natural pacemaker that is responsible for generating the same electrical impulses to communicate to the cardiac muscle so that the cardiac muscle can contract. I hope we are following. I hope we are following, my excellent biology students. Let us look at the description of the heart. We need to know how the heart looks like. And later on, I'm also going to show you the 3D view of the heart. So that's the general diagram that most of us are familiar with. By the way, I have two diagrams. I'm going to show you this one and there's another one so that we are familiar with both, okay? So as you can see, we've got different parts that are forming up the heart. First of all, what you need to know is that the heart has got two sides. It has got the left side and the right side. And the other thing that you need to take note of is that the heart is opposite to you. So meaning your right side is the left side for the heart, and your left side is the right side of the heart. Now, on the right side and on the left side, we have chambers. The chambers are on top. Two are on top, two are down. The chambers that are on top are collectively called atria, but singular, it is atrium. So on the top side of the heart, or on the top part of the heart, on the right side, we've got the right atrium. And on the left side, we've got the left atrium. Those are the top chambers of the heart. They are collectively called atria. The one on the right, it is known as right atrium. The one on the left is known as left atrium. And then the bottom chambers, we have both on the left side and on the right side. The left side, we've got what we call left ventricle on the bottom, okay? And then on the right side, we've got right ventricle at the bottom. So yeah, those are the four chambers. Two chambers on top, two chambers down. The top chambers are collectively called atria. The bottom chambers are collectively called ventricles. The top chamber, which is on the right, known as right atrium. The top chamber, which is on the left, is known as the left atrium. The bottom chamber on the right is known as right ventricle. The bottom chamber on the left is known as left ventricle. Those are the chambers that we have. I'm sure you can see them in the diagram that we're looking at right now. And then the other thing that we need to know are the blood vessels. Remember, the heart pumps blood around the body through blood vessels. There are two types of blood vessels that are attached to the heart, and these are the arteries and the veins. So we've got two veins attached to the heart and two arteries attached to the heart. What we need to know is that veins transport blood towards the heart. So the veins are the ones that are responsible for bringing blood to the heart. And then the arteries are the blood vessels that take blood away from the heart. So in our diagram that we have, we've got two arteries that are responsible for taking blood away from the heart, and we've got two veins that are responsible for bringing blood to the heart. The two arteries are the pulmonary artery and the aorta, and the two veins are the pulmonary vein and the vena cava. Those are the blood vessels attached to the heart. And what we need to know is that the artery which is on the left side is the aorta, the artery on the right side is the pulmonary artery, and then the vein on the left side is the pulmonary vein, and the vein on the right side is the vena cava. Okay, now I've talked about blood vessels and chambers. What else can we see in our diagram? Well, we've got the valves. What valves do is that they simply prevent the backflow of blood, and we have four sets of valves. The valves that are between the right atrium and the right ventricle are known as the tricuspid valves or tricuspid valves, and the valves between the left atrium and the left ventricle are known as the bicuspid valve or bicuspid valve. And then the valves between the pulmonary artery and the right ventricle are known as the pulmonary semilunar valves. And the valves between the aorta and the left ventricle are known as the aortic semilunar valves. And finally, the wall which separates these two sides, left and right, is simply known as the septum. So that's the complete description of the heart using this diagram. Let me show you the other diagram that we have, my excellent biology student. So looking at the diagram that we have, what you need to know is that the body has got the top part and the bottom part. So if you look at our diagram, we have the vena cava, but we've got the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava, meaning the superior vena cava brings blood from the top part of the body, bringing it to the heart, and then the inferior vena cava brings blood to the heart from the bottom part of the body. By the way, the arrows that are in blue, they represent deoxygenated blood, and the arrows in red, they represent oxygenated blood. Now, if you look at the pulmonary artery as well, they are indicating two directions, one which is going on the left side, the other one which is going on the right side. Why is it so? Because we've got two lungs. One is on the left side and the other one is on the right side. So both lungs, they have to be supplied with deoxygenated blood so that that blood can be oxygenated once it passes through the lungs. Likewise, we've got the pulmonary vein, okay, which is indicating that blood is coming in from into the heart from the left side as well as the right side. The same reason that I gave on the pulmonary vein applies, on the pulmonary artery applies on the pulmonary vein. We've got the lungs on the left and on the right. Therefore, oxygenated blood which is coming from the lungs has to be supplied from both sides. blood coming from the right lung and the other blood coming from the left lung. Otherwise, most students, they're usually confused with this diagram, but it's one of the easiest diagrams. Looking at the aorta, it has got three possible routes which are transporting blood to different parts of the body. Otherwise, the other parts remain the same. We've got the right atrium, as you can see on the diagram. We've got the left atrium. We've got the right ventricle. We also have the left ventricle. Then we've got the tricuspid valve on the right side, and then we've got the bicuspid valve on the left side, which is also known as mitral valve. And then we also have the aortic valve, and we've got the pulmonary semilunar valves. All right, so these are the two diagrams that we should be familiar with when it comes to the heart. Now, let's look at the functions of the heart parts. Starting with the chambers, we know that the heart is made up of 4 chambers. 2 chambers on top, 2 chambers down. The chambers on top are collectively called atria. We've got one on the right side known as the right atrium, and the other on the left side known as the left atrium. And we've got 2 bottom chambers, the one on the right side known as right ventricle, and the one on the left known as left ventricle. So what's the function of the chambers? So chambers simply receive blood, and they have wall which will pump the blood to the next chamber until it exits the heart. So chambers, they simply receive blood, and they've got walls, okay? Remember, the walls of the heart are made up of a cardiac muscle, right? So these chambers have got walls which will contract to pump that blood into the next chamber until the blood exits the heart. Okay, that's the function of chambers. They simply receive blood and pump it to the next chamber until that blood exits the heart. The right side of the heart, RA and RV, handles deoxygenated blood and sends it to the lungs for oxygenation. By the way, RA simply stands for right atrium, and RV stands for right ventricle. So the right side of the heart deals with deoxygenated blood, meaning blood that does not contain oxygen. Okay. And then the left side of the heart, left atrium and left ventricle, handles oxygenated blood and sends it to the rest of the body. So it is the left side that receives oxygenated blood. Okay. The right side receives deoxygenated blood, while the left side receives oxygenated blood. Okay. And then we've got veins which are attached to the heart. So we've got the superior vena cava, okay, which collects deoxygenated blood from the upper body and brings it to the right atrium, where it then moves into the right ventricle and then to the lungs to trade in carbon dioxide for oxygen. So we've got the superior vena cava. Remember, I said the body has got 2 parts, the upper part and the lower part. So blood coming from the upper part is going to it will go to the heart, and it will be received by the heart through the superior vena cava. Okay, so the superior vena cava, it is the one which is going to collect the deoxygenated blood from the upper part of the body. Then it will take it to the heart. That blood will now move into the right ventricle, and then it will be taken to the lungs so that it can be oxygenated. Okay. And then we've got the inferior vena cava, which collects deoxygenated blood from the lower part of the body and brings it to the right atrium, where it then moves into the right ventricle, then to the lungs to trade in carbon dioxide for oxygen. So in other words, we've got the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. The superior vena cava brings deoxygenated blood from the upper part of the body, taking it to the heart, while the inferior vena cava brings deoxygenated blood from the lower part of the body, taking it to the heart. This blood will now go into the right ventricle, and eventually it will be pumped going into the lungs so that it can be oxygenated. Because remember, where it is coming from, it is coming as deoxygenated. Therefore, it needs to be oxygenated. All right. And then we've got the pulmonary vein. The pulmonary vein receives oxygenated blood from the lungs and delivers it to the left atrium, where it then enters the left ventricle to be circulated throughout the body. So the pulmonary vein, which is located on the left side, it is the one that receives oxygenated blood from the lungs. Once blood has been oxygenated, it will come back to the heart through the pulmonary vein, okay? And this blood will now enter the left ventricle and eventually it will be pumped to the rest of the body. So these are the veins that are attached to the heart. We've got the vena cava, of which when it comes to the vena cava, we've got the superior one and the inferior one. Then we've got the pulmonary vein. These are the two veins attached to the heart. Now let's talk about the arteries that are attached to the heart. So we've got the aorta, okay? And the aorta, what it does is that, first of all, what we need to know is that the aorta is the largest blood vessel in the body, and it is responsible for delivering oxygenated blood to the body. It is the one that supplies the entire body with oxygenated blood. That's the function of the aorta, to simply transport oxygenated blood to the rest of the body. All right. And then the other artery that we have is the pulmonary artery. So the pulmonary arteries carry deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs. They are the only arteries in the body that carry deoxygenated blood. The main pulmonary artery, which is the pulmonary trunk, leaves the right ventricle at the pulmonary valve. Okay, remember the pulmonary valve? Okay, it soon splits into the right and left pulmonary arteries, which carry blood to each of the lungs. Remember the diagram we had arteries going to the left side, and we had other arteries going to the right side, because both lungs have to be supplied with this deoxygenated blood so that the blood can be oxygenated. Otherwise, these are the arteries that are attached to the heart. We've got the aorta and the pulmonary artery. Now let's talk about the valves. Valves, they simply prevent backflow of blood. They prevent the backflow of blood. Okay, simple. They ensure that blood is flowing in one direction. And then we've got the septum. Okay. So the septum is a thin wall of tissue that separates the two sides of the heart, dividing the right and the left atria and ventricles. Its main function are: 1, separation. Okay, separation, that's the main function. The septum keeps the oxygen-rich blood from the left side of the heart and separates from the oxygen, which is poor blood, oxygen poor blood, on the right side. So what they are simply saying here is that the septum separates the deoxygenated blood, which is on the right side, from the oxygenated blood, which is on the left side. So it separates the deoxygenated blood, which is from the right side, and it's separated from the oxygenated blood on the left side. So the septum separates the two kinds of blood. And then the other function of the septum is prevention of mixing. Okay, the septum prevents the mixing of blood from the two sides of the heart, ensuring that oxygen-rich blood is pumped to the body and oxygen-poor blood is sent to the lungs. Okay, that's the other function. It ensures that the deoxygenated blood does not mix with the oxygenated blood. Okay, simple. Simple. So these are the functions of the heart parts. These are the main functions of the heart parts. Now, before we look at pumping of blood within the heart, let me just give you a 3D view of the heart so that we can look at this heart in details. Welcome to our 3D view, my excellent biology students. So this is the heart. I know we've already looked at some figures for the heart, but I just thought of, showing you this 3D view so we can just solidify our understanding on the structure of the heart. So my main objective here really is to just emphasize on how blood vessels are arranged and how they are attached to the heart. So we know that there are two types of blood vessels. We've got the veins and the arteries. The veins are two. We've got pulmonary vein and the vena cava, and then we've got the arteries, which are two as well. We've got the pulmonary artery and the aorta. So let me just let's just look at these blood vessels together. Okay, so I'm sure we are familiar with the one which is on top. Okay, let me just do this. Okay. So the one which is on top, this one which has got 3 holes, let me highlight it. It is known as the aorta. That is the aorta. And the function of the aorta is that it supplies or it transports oxygenated blood to the rest of the body. Okay, that's the function of the aorta, and that's how it looks like. It has got those 3 holes because they go to the upper part of the body, and then we've got this bottom hole, okay, hole, which leads to the bottom part of the body. So we've got these 3 which are going to which are supplying the top part of the body with oxygenated blood, and the one which is down, it supplies the bottom part of the body with oxygenated blood. Otherwise, that's what we need to know about the aorta. Now let's look at another blood vessel. Okay, we've got a couple of them. Let me just highlight the one which is just below the aorta. Okay, it is known as the pulmonary trunk. Pulmonary trunk. Okay, pulmonary trunk. So what we need to know is that there are 2 pulmonary arteries. One is joining the pulmonary trunk on one side, and the other pulmonary artery is joining the pulmonary trunk on the other side. Okay, so as you can see, we've got 2 holes. Okay, that is where these pulmonary arteries are joining the pulmonary trunk. And we know that the pulmonary artery, it is the one that transports deoxygenated blood to the lungs. And we've got 2 lungs, isn't it? One on the left, the other one on the right. And both lungs have to be supplied with deoxygenated blood so that that blood can be oxygenated. So the one which is on the right, it is known as the right pulmonary artery. Okay, the one which is on the right, it is known as the right pulmonary artery, which is supplying the right lung with deoxygenated blood. And the one which is on the left is known as the left pulmonary artery, supplying the left lung with deoxygenated blood. Otherwise, what I have highlighted right now and what you're looking at, which is in yellow, is the pulmonary trunk. All right, let's look at another one. Let's look at other blood vessels. They're just down here. These are the pulmonary veins. So I'm sure you can see that uku kuside uku kulituma tubes tubiri. Now uku kuside kulituma tubes tubiri. That is to indicate that the ones which are on the right side, they are supplying or they are connected to the right lung. And the one on the left side, they are connected to the left lung. The function of the pulmonary veins is that they transport oxygenated blood from the lungs, bringing it to the heart. So the veins that are connected on the right lung, they are collecting oxygenated blood from the right lung. And the ones that are connected to the left lung, they are collecting oxygenated blood from the left lung. Otherwise, these, my excellent students, are the pulmonary veins. Okay, now I want to make this a little bit interesting by just introducing the lungs so we can see how they all blend together. I'm sure that would be nice. Let's do that. So let me just introduce the lungs to just show you how they will all blend together. So these are the lungs, okay? These are the lungs that are responsible for oxygenating the blood, okay? So let me just bring them closer, okay? So I'm sure you cannot see the connection, but it is there. Let me just do this. I think we can clearly see it from this side. So let me do this, okay? So I'm sure you can see that hole there in the lung. that is where these pulmonary veins are connecting with the lung. Okay, so the lung is the one which is responsible for oxygenating the blood, and the pulmonary vein is linking with this lung pali ako kaho kamene kaonekera hapo. Otherwise, this looks beautiful. This looks really nice. Okay, this looks really nice. So this is how the lungs are located, with the heart just in between them. The heart is just in between them. All right, let's talk about another blood vessel. I have already talked about the aorta, the pulmonary artery, and now the pulmonary vein, meaning I'm remaining with one, which is the vena cava. So let me just look for it. But before I do that, let me subtract, or let me remove these lungs so we can remain with the heart alone. Wonderful, wonderful. So yeah, let's look at the vein. Let's look for the vein. So this vein that we're talking about, remember the vena, which is the vena cava, okay? And there are two. We've got the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. So here is the vena cava. I'm sure you can see. This is the superior vena cava, okay? And then we've got another one below, just below, which is known as the inferior vena cava. So what these guys do is that the superior vena cava transports deoxygenated blood from the top part of the body, bringing it to the heart. And the inferior vena cava, my excellent student, transports deoxygenated blood from the bottom part of the body, bringing it to the heart. Otherwise, this is the inferior vena cava. And then we've got, let me just do this, the superior vena cava. Wow, the heart, yeah, the heart. So this is our 3D view of the heart. Let me try to incorporate blood vessels, okay, so we can see some vessels, some blood vessels that are in red. Okay, so now what you're looking at, my excellent students, these are the veins. Aya ndiye ma veins. I repeat, aya ndiye ma veins. So kuli yali mu red, kuli na yamene yali mu blue. The ones that are in red are responsible for transporting oxygenated blood. The ones in blue, they transport deoxygenated blood. These are the veins, my excellent students. So yeah, remember the pulmonary veins that I had showed you, that I had shown you, Chizungu, that I had shown you. These are the pulmonary veins, okay? They are the ones that are responsible for transporting what? Oxygenated blood from the lungs. So now if I bring in the lungs, I'm sure it will now blend in because they will connect, okay? So apa ndipo pamene yachitira connect ma veins, ma pulmonary veins. Let me just try to draw apa ndipo pamene yachitira connect ma pulmonary veins. Napo penango ndipo pamene yachitira connect. So let me just bring in the lungs to see how they are going to look together. But before I do that, let me also show you, because these are the pulmonary veins, let me also show you the vena cava. Remember, we've got the inferior and the superior, okay? So let me just show you the vena cava, the inferior and the superior, okay? The one which are in blue because they transport deoxygenated blood. So this is the superior vena cava right here, the superior vena cava, okay? The one which is responsible for transporting deoxygenated blood from the top part of the body, bringing it to the heart. And then we've got the other one below, so that's the superior vena cava, by the way. Then we've got the other one below, just below. Okay, let me do this so that we can see it. We've got this other one. This is the inferior vena cava, which is responsible for transporting deoxygenated blood from the bottom, okay, from the bottom part of the body, bringing it to the heart. Now, let's go back to the pulmonary veins that transport oxygenated blood from the lungs. Okay, so let me just do this. Okay, so let me just bring them close. Okay. So now we've got the pulmonary vein. The pulmonary vein. Remember, pulmonary vein, they transport oxygenated blood from the lungs, bringing it to the heart. So these are the pulmonary veins, okay? One, and then we've got another one. And then on this other side, we've got these, okay, pulmonary veins. Okay, they are the ones that are responsible for transporting oxygenated blood from the lungs, bringing it to the heart. So now let me just bring in the lungs to see how they are going to connect, and I'm sure it's going to look more clearer than before when I brought in the lungs. Okay, wonderful. So now I'm sure we can see how the pulmonary veins are linking with the lungs. So let me just do this. It's kind of hard, but I'm going to manage. Okay. Wow, this is okay. Let me do this again. So I'm sure you can see that the pulmonary veins are connecting with the lungs. So they are collecting oxygenated blood from the lungs, bringing it to the heart. We've got other pulmonary veins on this other side. Okay. Just a minute, my excellent students, because you need to see this. Okay. So I'm sure you can see the pulmonary veins which are entering the lungs. Okay, they are linking with the lung, which is the left lung. Okay, collecting oxygenated blood from that left lung, bringing it to the heart. That is how this looks like when we blend it in all together. Okay, now these are the veins. Let us now look at the arteries. So arteries, they transport oxygenated blood, except for one artery, which is known as the pulmonary artery. Okay, so these are the arteries that we have. Okay, these are the arteries that we have. So if you remember those three tubes on top, these are the ones that are now connecting. Okay, so the arteries are now connected to the heart, and they're now going to different parts of the body, as you can see. So we've got the three which were on top. These three, I don't know if you can see them. Let me just try to highlight. We've got this one, we've got that other one which is next, and then we've got this other one. There are three, right? They are all going to the upper part of the body, supplying the upper part of the body with oxygenated blood. And then we've got this other one which is now going down, okay, going to the bottom part of the body. I hope we can see that. So this is the one which is now supplying the bottom part of the body with the oxygenated blood. And I'm sure you can see these branches, they are also going to the lungs, because the lungs, they also need to be supplied with oxygenated blood. So they're going to branch off from this main route of the aorta. Okay. Now we've got something else. There's something I want to show you. Something that I want to show you, my excellent students. So remember, let me just remove the lungs, but I'm sure you can see that color which is blue. Okay, so that is a pulmonary artery, the one which is in blue, which is now transporting deoxygenated blood from the heart, taking it to the lungs. Okay, we've got another color there which is blue. I'm sure you can see it. That's another pulmonary artery transporting deoxygenated blood from the heart, taking it to the lungs. Okay, so there's something else that I want to show you. Let me just remove the lungs. I'm sure it will be clearer when I remove the lungs. All right, so I hope I can find it now that the lungs are out of the picture. I hope I can find it. Anyway, it's not really important, but I really wanted to show you that thing. I hope I can still find it. Okay, I think I can't. Otherwise, this is the 3D view of the heart, my excellent biology students. Now let's look at pumping of blood within the heart. Pumping of blood within the heart. When blood enters, how does it move? Okay, from one chamber to the other. What happens? What really happens? So the heart pumps blood by the contraction and relaxation of the heart muscles. Okay, the heart pumps blood by the contraction and relaxation of the heart muscles. So the muscle of the heart, it contracts and it relaxes. Okay, so if it contracts, that is known as systole. If it relaxes, diastole. Okay, I hope we still remember that. So the period of contraction of the heart is called systole. During this period, the heart pumps blood into circulation. So during the period of systole, the walls of the heart are contracting, and when they contract, they are pushing blood, they are pumping blood. Okay, so the period of contraction of the heart is called systole, and during this period, the heart pumps blood into circulation. And then the period of relaxation of the heart is called diastole. And during this period, the heart chambers are filled with blood. So during this period of diastole, the walls of the heart are relaxing. And during this period, the chambers are now receiving blood. Okay, so there's a period of receiving blood where the walls are relaxing, and there's a period of pumping that blood when the walls are now contracting. Keep that in mind. So the period of relaxation of the heart is called diastole, and during this period, the heart chambers are being filled. They are filled with what? Blood. So when the atria contract, ventricles relax. Keep that in mind. When the walls of the atria contract, the walls of the ventricles are going to do what? Relax. When ventricles contract, atria relax. Meaning when the walls of the ventricles contract, the walls of the atria are going to relax. Okay. When the right atrium and left atrium are filled with blood from the vena cava and the pulmonary vein, the atria contract while the ventricles relax. So the vena cava supplies the right atrium with deoxygenated blood. The pulmonary vein supplies the left atrium with oxygenated blood. So when the atria, the right atrium and the left atrium are filled with blood from the vena cava and the pulmonary vein, they are going to contract. The walls are going to contract. During this stage, the ventricles are doing what? Relaxing, because now when the atria contract, the ventricles will start receiving blood. And since they are receiving blood, the walls of the ventricles are going to relax. This results in the pumping of blood from the atria, which is left atrium and right atrium, to the ventricles, which is the left ventricle and the left ventricle. During this period, the tricuspid and bicuspid valves open to allow blood passage from the atria to the ventricles. Because remember, the tricuspid, which is on the right side, it is between the right atrium and the right ventricle. So for blood to move from the right atrium into the right ventricle, the tricuspid valves have to open. Okay. Likewise, the bicuspid is on the left side between the left atrium and the left ventricle. So to allow blood to move from the left atrium going into the left ventricle, it has to open. Therefore, during this period, the tricuspid and bicuspid valves open to allow blood passage from the atria to the ventricles. And remember, in this time, the ventricles are receiving blood. Therefore, the walls of the ventricles are going to relax. Okay. Now, when the ventricles are filled with blood, what will happen? They contract, because now they are full. They have now received enough blood from the atria, which is right atrium and left atrium. Therefore, they will now contract. The walls of the ventricles are now going to contract. Okay, the walls of the ventricles will now contract. The right ventricle pumps blood to the pulmonary artery, while the left ventricle to the aorta. During this period, the pulmonary and aortic valves open to allow blood passage from the tricuspid and bicuspid valves. Let me read that again. During this period, the pulmonary and aortic valves open to allow blood passage, but the tricuspid and bicuspid valves close to prevent the backflow of blood from ventricles into atria. So, in this stage now, the bicuspid and the tricuspid are going to close because the walls of the ventricles are contracting. If the bicuspid and tricuspid valves are still open during the time when the walls of the ventricles are contracting, that can cause blood to go back into the right atrium and the left atrium. So to prevent that, they have to close, because now blood has to be pumped out of the heart from the ventricles. Okay, so remember, the left ventricle will pump blood taking it to the aorta, while the right ventricle will pump blood taking it to the pulmonary artery. And during this stage, the pulmonary semilunar valves and the aortic semilunar valves are going to open to allow that blood to flow from the ventricles to the pulmonary artery and to the aorta. I hope you are following my excellent students. This can be a bit confusing, but you just need to know it. Okay, what you can do is just watch this video again. All right. Then the ventricles relax again to receive blood from the atria. So once that blood has been pumped out of the heart, okay, then the walls of the ventricles are going to relax, because now they'll be receiving another set of blood from the atria. During this period, the pulmonary and aortic valves close to prevent the backflow of blood from the pulmonary artery and aorta to the ventricles. Let me read that again. During this period, the pulmonary and aortic valves close to prevent the backflow of blood from the pulmonary artery and the aorta to the ventricles. I hope we are clear, my students, and the cycle continues, pumping blood in one direction. So that's what happens. That's how blood is pumped within the heart. Make sure that you know this, my excellent biology students. Now let's look at coronary heart diseases, and we are going to conclude on this part. So coronary heart disease is commonly known as a heart attack. Okay, the heart needs oxygen and nutrients to carry out metabolic processes. So the heart, being a muscular organ, it also needs oxygen and nutrients to carry out metabolic processes. And the heart is not nourished by blood in the atria. Okay, the heart is not nourished by blood in the atria and ventricles, but contains a special blood vessel called coronary artery. Okay, so the heart is not supplied with blood by the ventricles and the atria. No, there is a blood vessel which is responsible for supplying the walls of the heart with the required nutrients. Okay, and this blood vessel is known as the coronary artery, which branches from the aorta. Now, coronary arteries can be blocked due to depositions in these vessels. So they can be blocked. When they are blocked, that will now lead to what we call coronary heart diseases. So when that special tube which supplies the walls of the heart with food and oxygen is blocked, it will lead to this condition known as coronary heart diseases. So when blocked, heart cells cannot receive oxygen and nutrients, therefore begin to die. This condition is what is called coronary heart disease. So blockage of the vessel is mainly caused by too much fats and cholesterol in the blood. Wamene mkondo kujia maningi mafats. Pizza every day. Every day mfuna che kujia nkuku. Vegetables. Eat vegetables. Eat. But you just want chicken. If you just see that there's meat, if you just see that there's just vegetables, chinja. Don't be like that. Don't. So now, causes of coronary heart diseases. Number 1, high fat and lipid food intake. Too much fatty foods. Too much. That will cause this condition. Smoking. Don't smoke. It will also lead to coronary heart disease. Sedentary life. It's a life yapa is a child, you do not exercise, you are just sleeping, what. Also, that is a cause of coronary heart diseases. That's why exercises are important. You need to be exercising. Okay, you need to be doing that. Chronic stress. So chronic stress, prolonged stress. That's what we mean by chronic stress. If you are stressed every time, it will lead to coronary heart disease. Having looked at the causes, obviously the prevention of coronary heart diseases are obvious. Number 1, reduce fat and lipid food intake. Reduce. Don't eat too much. Then quit smoking. Stop smoking. If you do, stop. And then exercise frequently. Very important for you to be exercising. So exercise frequently. And reduce stress. Don't think too much. Reduce stress. Okay? Those are some of the ways you can prevent CHD. All right, my excellent biology student, we're going to end here for today's tutorial video. This is a long video, but I just sort of, saying everything that has to be said about the heart in this video. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thank you very much for watching up to this time. This is Philip Koma, the excellent biology tutor. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will really appreciate. All right, stay blessed.